Welcome. This video is being presented to all Edgewood employees as a guide on how to enroll a pre-kinder student. This video was created by the PEMS and Student Information Systems Department, and Helica Garza is the coordinator. My name is Brenda Nagelhout, and I'm the PEMS specialist, and I'll also be presenting this video. Before I begin, there will be parts of this video that will contain information from the 2018-2019 Student in Attendance Accounting Handbook. There are areas that I will cover, and then there will be areas that I will skip through. It's highly recommended that you go back at your convenience to review this information. We will begin with how a student qualifies for pre-K services. Students must meet at least one of the requirements for pre-K eligibility. This child is economically disadvantaged. The child is unable to speak or comprehend the English language and are limited English proficiency. The child is homeless. The child has ever been in conservatorship, foster care of the Department of Family and Protective Services. The child has a parent or official guardian that is an active duty member of the Armed Forces of the United States, including the state military forces or a reserve component of the Armed Forces, who is ordered to active duty by proper authority. This includes uniformed service members who are missing in action. A parent is a Star of Texas participant. The child has a parent or official guardian that is a member of the Armed Forces of the United States who was injured or killed while serving on active duty. And all pre-K students must be 3 or 4 years of age as of September 1st, 2018. Now I'll review some reminders for pre-K. Running reports for attendance or rosters. Pre-K students are now on Track 1. When requesting reports, be sure to indicate on the report Track 1. All other grade levels will be run on Track 0. All pre-kinder students must have an eligibility code 2, eligible for half-day, and an enrollment code of 1. Pre-kinder students who are special ed will have an eligibility code 1, eligible for full day, except for the following special ed students. If the special ed student has an instructional code of 40, mainstream, or disability code of 09, speech impairment, the student must qualify for pre-kinder. If the student does not qualify for pre-kinder, the student would be coded as a 5 and eligible for half-day. Enrollment procedures and requirements. A student must be enrolled in only one district at a time, thus eliminating duplicate TSDS PEMS reporting for a student. Enrolling a student in a school district requires presentation of proof of the student's identity, age, and residency, or other eligibility for enrollment. At your convenience, please review the following slide. Documentation of identity and age. A parent or other person with legal control of the student under a court order who is enrolling the student has up to 30 days from the date of enrollment to provide proof of the student's identity. Any of the documents in the following list is acceptable for proof of identity and age: a birth certificate, statement of the child's date of birth issued for school admission purposes by the Division of the Texas Department of State Health Services responsible for vital statistics, a driver's license, a passport, a school ID card, records or report card, military ID, a hospital record, adoption records, church baptismal record, or any legal document that establishes identity. For the military ID, please do not make a copy. Just make note on the enrollment papers that you've reviewed the military ID and verify the information. The next slide is information on failure to receive student records and discrepancies in student names. Again, at your convenience, please review this information. Eligible days present and ADA eligibility. For pre-K, our students are half-day A student eligible for pre-K served in the pre-K classroom by a teacher for the full day. Student age has to be 3 or 4. And then there's an eligibility 5, a student ineligible for pre-K served in the pre-K classroom by a pre-K teacher for half a day. Again, the student has to be 3 or 4 years of age. And we have eligibility 1, a student eligible for pre-K and special education (PPCD) served in the pre-K classroom by a pre-K teacher for half day and served in the PPCD for half day. Again, the student has to be 3 or 4 years of age. The next slide is information on enrollment for a student who qualifies. Just some reminders on what's required for registration. It's required that we have a social security number. Next would be the student's last name, first name, full middle name on the birth certificate, a generation code, their grade level pre-K, in reference to the social security and the date of birth and the name on the student. Make sure that you get this information directly from the documentation that's provided to you. So that would be a social security card or a birth certificate to get their name and date of birth. Next would be entry date, the date that the student enrolls. The enrollment code, all students must have an enrollment code of a 1. Eligibility code, if the student qualifies for pre-K, it's eligibility 2. Their gender, male or female. The attendance track, all students are on track 1. Their ethnicity, the race, their home language, and then the student language that is spoken. Next is parents' names, their information from their driver's license or their state ID. Date of birth information you can get from that driver's license or state ID. The relationship to the student, and then if the student was enrolled by that parent. Next would be the address. I always default duplicate address to a Y. It will populate all the spaces in here. The street number, the street name. Please use the directory if it's a student in our district. Do not type the address in manually. You could start with like the first 3 or 4 letters of the street and then click on the radio button. Next would be the home phone number. Again, if they have the same home number, you can default this to a duplicate home phone as yes. Any work information, cell phone, and their occupation. The next step in enrolling a student would be on WST 1150, the miscellaneous indicator codes. This information is where the economically disadvantaged code is. In our district, we use 00 or 99. The only time that we use 01 is through our office. If you ever see a 01 listed in the eco disc, please do not change it or delete it. The only 2 codes that data clerks are responsible for is if they're not economically disadvantaged or 99 other economic disadvantage. The EcoDisc is one of the indicators that can be used to qualify a student for pre-K services. Another indicator used to determine if a student qualifies for pre-K services is if the student is LEP. It's very important that the home language is coded correctly. All LEP students must have a home language code of 01. It's very important for a student to be tested if Spanish or other language is indicated. Again, this helps to determine if the student is LEP. Next screen is information on eligibility for bilingual English as a second language. Again, at your convenience, please review this information. This screen is WST 1175, the bilingual ESL information. The screen, again, is one of the indicators for pre-K services, if they qualify. If the student is a qualified military dependent, you would code the student on WST 1107. You would use for pre-K qualified military dependent. This is one of the indicators also used for pre-K services. Next screen is information on homeless students. Please review at your convenience. Students are coded on WST 1326 for homeless. Again, this is another indicator for pre-K services. Any student who is homeless will need to be verified through the school-age parent homeless specialist. Contact 210-444-7750. Clerks do not have access to this screen. The next screen is information on pre-K eligibility based on the child having been in foster care. Again, at your convenience, please review this information. If the student is a foster care child, you'll code the student on WST 1150. The student is in the conservatorship of the Department of Family and Protective Services, following an advisory hearing held as provided by Section 262.201 of the Family Code. When a parent says the child is in foster care, in order to qualify for DFPC, they have to have either Forms 2085E or 2085KO or 2085FC, and the student would be coded as one in conservatorship. Next screen is information on Parents Star of Texas Award. Again, at your convenience, please review this information. If the student qualifies for pre-K services under Star of Texas, this information will be coded on WST 1108 under the Star of Texas indicator as a 1. Student is a child of a person eligible for the Star of Texas Award as a peace officer, a firefighter, or emergency medical first responder. Next screen is information on preschool programs for children with disabilities, the PPCD. Again, at your convenience, please read this information. Next, we'll be covering when a child does not qualify for pre-K services. Everything applies the same as registration for a student who qualifies for pre-K. The only difference is the eligibility code will be a 5. Next screen is an example of a student who is pre-K and is speech only and qualifies for pre-K services. If the student disability is speech only 09 and no instructional code 00, the student must qualify for pre-K services. If not, the student will be coded as ineligible for pre-K services. So in this example, the student's instructional code is 00, his disability is 09, but he does qualify for pre-K services, so he would be coded as A2. The next screen is a student who is pre-K and is speech only and does not qualify for pre-K services. The student's instructional is 00, disability 09, but his eligibility code is a 5 because he does not qualify for pre-K services. Next is a student who is pre-K and is special ed with an instructional setting code of 40 mainstream and student qualifies for pre-K services. If the student's instructional code is 40, the student must qualify for pre-K services. If not, the student would be coded as ineligible for pre-K services. So in this example, the student's instructional code is 40, disability is 06, but he does qualify for pre-K services, so he's coded as a 2. Next example is a student who is pre-K and is special ed with an instructional setting code of 40 mainstream, but does not qualify for pre-K services. Again, his instructional code is a 40, his disability is 06, but he does not qualify for any pre-K services, so his student eligibility would be a 5. Next example is a student who is pre-K and is in special ed. If the student's instructional code is anything other than 00, no instructional code, or 40, mainstream, the student is eligible. Eligibility code will be a 1, eligible for full day. So in this example, the student's instructional code is a 42, his disability is 08, so his eligibility code would be a 1. The next example is pre-K student of an employee. Student must meet eligibility requirements for pre-K services. If the student does not meet the requirements, the student is coded as 5 and eligible for half day. If the student meets the requirements for pre-K services, the student is coded as 2, eligible for half day. Pre-K student of an employee who lives out of district. The student must meet eligibility requirements for pre-K services. If the student does not qualify for pre-K services, the eligibility code will be a 6, eligible transfer for half day. So in this example, the student does qualify. His eligibility is a 6, transfer for half day. You must also remember to code the CIR, the school that the child would be attending if they were in their home campus out of district, and the attribution code must be a 6. Next is an example of a pre-K student of an employee who lives out of district. If the student does not qualify for pre-K service, the eligibility code will be a 5 and eligible for half day. So the student is coded as a 5 because he does not qualify. You still have to put the CIR and the attribution code. A reminder, when enrolling a student who lives out of district, the following is required for out of district students. The campus of responsibility, which is the county district code where the student would be attending at their home school district. The attribution code, it must be a 6, a transfer between public school district or out of district students. A 3, the transfer factor of 5 out of district on WST 1107, and then the neighborhood code of 888. Next requirement for pre-K enrolling is the generic program pre-K funding entry withdrawal. On Tuesday, 8/28 of 2018, our department ran a job to input all the currently enrolled pre-K students with the generic program pre-K funding code. Beginning Wednesday, 8/29/2018, all new pre-K students enrolling, transferring to another campus, or withdrawing. The data clerk on campus will have to input this information in iText manually on WST 1327. Information will follow on the next page. All pre-K students are required to have a generic program pre-K funding information. Use the student's entry date into pre-K for the entry date. So in this example, for eligibility 2, the program type is O2, the primary funding is 4, and the secondary funding is 2. Please review this chart at your convenience to code the students correctly. Next information is pre-K instructional aids on WST 0444. Educational aids that are serving in grade levels pre-kinder course sections. LEAs will be required to report all teachers, teachers of record, assistant teachers, support teachers, and applicable educational aids that provide instructional services for a particular class. A pre-K classroom aid assists the teacher of record in the pre-K classroom. Each course section must be reported with at least one teacher of record. The following is an example of how to set up a pre-K educational aid on WST 0392. You would code this semester met as a 3, all day, room number, the period 01 to 02, the educational aids number, and code them as a 4 pre-K classroom aid and their start date. If the educational aid ever leaves the room or resigns from the district, you must go back and put an end date for that employee. Please contact our office anytime if you have any questions or need assistance with pre-K eligibility or enrolling a pre-K student. Thank you for viewing this presentation. I will now end this video.